Every person carries burdens. Some are small, some are heavy, but all of them weigh on the spirit in ways that are often unseen. Worries about the future, fears about relationships, struggles with finances, health, or purpose. They accumulate, and before you know it, you are walking through life bent under the weight of them. But here's the truth. You were never meant to carry all of this alone. God never intended for you to wrestle with every challenge by yourself. The very act of holding on to worry is like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you grip, the more it slips away, leaving your palms empty and your heart heavy. When you allow yourself to set these worries down, it is not a sign of weakness. It is a declaration of faith. It is a conscious decision to trust the one who sees what you cannot, knows what you do not, and can do what you cannot. Consider this: worry often begins with what ifs. What if I fail? What if I lose my job? What if my dreams never come true? These questions can haunt the mind, forming chains that bind the soul. But when you lay down your worries, you break those chains. You step into a space of freedom where fear no longer dictates your actions. It is a transformative act because it is not just about releasing the external pressures. It is about changing the internal landscape of your heart. You begin to replace anxiety with peace, doubt with hope, and fear with trust. Each worry that you surrender is like opening a door for grace to enter. It is also important to remember that God's capacity to carry your burdens is limitless. He is not constrained by time, space, or circumstance. When you place your worries in His hands, you are tapping into a source of strength that is infinite. You may think your problems are too complicated, too messy, or too overwhelming, but nothing escapes His vision. The burdens that feel unmanageable in your mind are already under His control. Laying them down is an act of obedience, and obedience invites divine intervention. Sometimes people resist laying down their worries because they feel a false sense of control. They think that by holding tightly to their problems, they are somehow protecting themselves. But in reality, holding on to worry only exhausts the mind and diminishes the soul. By contrast, when you let go, you create space for clarity, for solutions, and for divine guidance to emerge. Your mind becomes lighter, your heart becomes stronger, and your spirit begins to soar above the challenges that once seemed insurmountable. So today, make the decision. Take each worry, big or small, and place it in God's hands. Speak it aloud if you must. Write it down if it helps. Visualize yourself setting it at His feet. Know that this is not the end of your effort. This is the beginning of a new way of living, a new way of trusting, and a new way of experiencing peace. The moment you release your burdens, you create an opening for hope to flourish and for miracles to manifest in your life. Trust is not something that happens by accident. It is a deliberate, intentional act of the heart. It is not passive waiting, nor is it silent resignation. Trust is active and it requires courage. When you trust God, you are choosing to believe in His plan, His timing, and His power, even when your circumstances seem uncertain. You may not understand why things are happening the way they are. You may not see the full picture, but trust is the decision to walk forward anyway, knowing that the one who holds the universe His hands also holds your life. It is saying, Lord, I don't have all the answers, but I know you do. I may not understand, but I know you are faithful. I may feel weak, but I know your strength is made perfect in me. That is trust. Too often, we confuse trust with comfort. We think we must feel secure, we must see results, or we must understand the plan fully before we can trust. But true trust does not depend on what we see, it depends on who we know. It is anchored in the character of God, in his faithfulness, and in his unwavering love. When you understand that God's ways are higher than your ways and that his timing is perfect, you can begin to release the need to control everything and start living in freedom. Trust requires surrender. It asks you to stop trying to orchestrate every outcome, stop trying to manipulate every situation, and stop trying to force your life into your own understanding. Think about the times in your life when you tried to handle things on your own. How often did worry, fear, or doubt creep in? How often did anxiety cloud your judgment or steal your peace? Trust is the alternative. It is the path that leads to clarity, courage, and confidence. When you actively choose to trust God, you are saying, I believe you are bigger than my problems. I believe you can make a way where there seems to be no way. I believe your plan is for my good. This is not mere hope. This is bold faith that moves mountains and changes circumstances. Trust is also transformative. It changes how you see challenges, how you respond to difficulties, and how you navigate life. When you trust, you stop being controlled by fear, doubt, and uncertainty. You begin to act with confidence because you know that God is guiding your steps. You begin to speak words of life over your situation instead of words of despair. You begin to move forward with purpose even when the path is unclear. Every act of trust strengthens your faith and builds resilience in your soul. And trust is contagious. When you model trust in your life, others see it. Your confidence in God inspires those around you to let go of fear and embrace faith. Your trust becomes a testimony of God's power and faithfulness, encouraging others to lay down their burdens and step into his peace. Trust is not a one-time decision, it is a lifestyle. Each day, each challenge, each moment presents an opportunity to choose trust over fear, obedience over doubt, and faith over worry. So commit to this active trust. Step boldly into the day, knowing that even when the path is unclear, God is with you. Even when the outcome is uncertain, he is in control. Trust is the key that unlocks peace, purpose, and divine provision in your life. And it begins with the simple, deliberate choice to believe, to surrender, and to move forward in faith. No matter what you are facing today, remember this: God is bigger than any problem, any challenge, or any situation you encounter. Life can feel overwhelming at times, as if the weight of the world is pressing down on you, but nothing is beyond his power. When fear and doubt try to convince you that your circumstances are too difficult, remember that the one who created the heavens and the earth is more than capable of handling your life. Your struggles may seem monumental to you, but in his hands, they are nothing but small stones that he can turn into stepping stones for your breakthrough. Too often, we limit God by our own perspective. We see a mountain and think it is too high to climb. We see a storm and fear it will never pass. We see a door closed and assume all hope is gone. But God sees what we cannot. He knows the resources, the timing, and the opportunities that we cannot yet perceive. Trusting in His greatness means acknowledging that your view is limited, but His is limitless. It means surrendering the illusion of control and believing that He is orchestrating every detail for your good, even when it does not make sense in the moment. God's power is not measured by the size of your problem. It is measured by His ability to overcome it. The challenges you face today, whether they are financial struggles, health concerns, broken relationships, or unanswered prayers, are not bigger than the one who holds the universe. You may feel small, weak, or unprepared, but His strength is made perfect in your weakness. When you recognize that He is bigger than your circumstances, worry begins to lose its grip, anxiety begins to fade, and hope rises to fill the space that fear once occupied. It is also important to understand that God works in ways we do not always expect. Sometimes the solution to your problem may not come in the way you imagined. Sometimes the breakthrough you are praying for may come through a series of events that seem challenging at first, but when you trust that God is bigger than your problem, you are able to remain patient, steadfast, and faithful. You can walk through difficulties with confidence, knowing that He is already at work on your behalf. You do not have to figure everything out or carry the load alone. Believing that God is bigger than your problems changes your perspective and your response. Instead of panicking, you pray. Instead of giving up, you persevere. Instead of fearing the future, you step forward with faith. This belief empowers you to face life's challenges with courage, knowing that no matter how impossible a situation may seem, God is in control. Your hope is anchored not in circumstances, but in the one who is greater than every circumstance. So today, embrace this truth: no problem is too big, no challenge too complex, and no situation too hopeless for God. When you keep your eyes on Him, you can walk through life unshaken, knowing that the Creator of all things is working for your good and that His power far exceeds anything you might face. He is bigger than your problems, and trusting in Him allows you to live free from fear, filled with hope and empowered to overcome. Worry has a way of creeping into our lives quietly, but its effects are powerful and far-reaching. It steals our peace, clouds our judgment, and drains our energy. When we carry anxiety and fear, even the simplest tasks become heavy burdens. Our hearts grow restless, our minds are cluttered with what-ifs, and our spirits feel weighed down. Worry convinces us that we are alone in facing our challenges, that no one can help us, and that we must solve every problem by ourselves. But this is a lie. Worry is a thief, and it is trying to steal the joy and peace that are rightfully ours. When you recognize the destructive nature of worry, you begin to see the importance of releasing it and placing your trust in God. The power of worry lies in its ability to keep us focused on the problem instead of the solution. When your mind is consumed with anxiety, it becomes difficult to see the path forward. You replay scenarios over and over, imagining outcomes that may never happen, and you exhaust yourself in the process. But when you lay your worries down, you shift your focus from what you cannot control to what God can do. This is the beginning of freedom. By letting go of the weight of anxiety, you open the door for clarity, guidance, and peace to enter your life. Worry also robs us of joy. Life is meant to be experienced with gratitude, hope, and love. But when anxiety dominates our thoughts, joy becomes distant. Every moment spent in fear is a moment lost in peace. Every sleepless night spent worrying is a night stolen from restoration. But when you release your concerns to God, you reclaim the life that worry has been holding hostage. You invite joy back into your heart, and you create space for happiness, contentment, and a deeper connection to the one who sustains you. It is essential to understand that laying down worry is not a one-time act. It is a daily practice. Each morning, you have the choice to start your day carrying burdens or leaving them at the feet of God. Each time a fearful thought arises, you can remind yourself that God is bigger than your fear, wiser than your understanding, and more powerful than any challenge you face. By consistently choosing to trust Him, you build resilience in your spirit and strength in your faith. Letting go of worry also transforms your perspective. When you stop focusing on what could go wrong and start trusting in God's plan, you begin to see possibilities instead of problems. You begin to hear guidance instead of confusion. You begin to feel peace instead of fear. This shift allows you to approach life with confidence, courage, and hope, knowing that no matter what comes your way, God is in control. So, as you face the day, remember this: worry does not have to rule your life. It does not have to dictate your emotions or determine your decisions. You have the power to release it, to place your concerns in God's hands, and to walk forward with peace in your heart. When you lay down your worries, you are making room for God's peace to fill you, for joy to return, and for your spirit to thrive in freedom. Faith has the remarkable power to replace fear, and when we choose faith over worry, our entire perspective on life transforms. Fear thrives when we focus on what we cannot control, when we allow doubt to whisper lies into our hearts, and when we give more attention to problems than to the one who can solve them. But faith shifts our attention from the impossible to the possible, from the overwhelming to the victorious. It is an active declaration that no matter the storm or challenge, God's plan is greater than our fear, and His promises are stronger than our doubts. Faith is not simply believing that things will work out. It is knowing that God is already at work orchestrating the outcome even before we can see it. When you replace worry with faith, you allow hope to rise in your heart. Every anxious thought that once dominated your mind begins to dissolve as you remind yourself of God's faithfulness. You start to see that what seemed like obstacles are actually opportunities for growth, for learning, and for blessing. Faith enables you to walk through difficulties with courage because you are no longer bound by fear. You can make decisions, take steps, and pursue your dreams with confidence, knowing that God is guiding your path and that His strength is made perfect in your weakness. Faith also brings clarity. Worry clouds judgment and makes problems appear bigger than they are. It amplifies fears and magnifies doubts, leaving us feeling lost and uncertain. But faith allows you to see through the fog. It provides perspective. It reminds you that setbacks are temporary, trials have a purpose, and no challenge is beyond God's control. With faith, you begin to focus on solutions instead of problems, on possibilities instead of limitations, and on God's power instead of your own. Replacing fear with faith is not a passive process. It requires a conscious, daily decision to trust in God's timing, His wisdom, and His provision. It requires speaking words of life over your circumstances, declaring hope when everything around you seems hopeless, and stepping forward even when the path is unclear. Each time you act in faith, you are strengthening your spirit, training your heart to rely on God, and creating a foundation for greater victories in your life. Faith also opens the door to miracles and breakthroughs. When you move forward with belief, you position yourself to receive divine guidance, provision, and protection. Fear keeps you stuck. It paralyzes your spirit and delays God's blessings. Faith, on the other hand, propels you forward. It empowers you to overcome challenges, embrace opportunities, and experience the fullness of God's plan. By choosing faith over fear, you align yourself with God's power, wisdom, and grace, allowing His presence to transform every area of your life. So today, let faith replace fear. Let trust replace worry. Let hope rise in your heart and courage guide your steps. When you make the choice to live by faith, you are declaring that God is bigger than your problems, stronger than your fears, and greater than any circumstance you may face. Faith transforms, empowers, and elevates your life, and it begins with a single decision to believe in God's power and promises. Prayer and declaration are powerful tools that allow us to actively participate in God's work in our lives. They are not simply words spoken into the air. They are expressions of faith, acts of surrender, and declarations of trust that have the power to shift circumstances and transform hearts. When you pray and speak your trust aloud, you are not only communicating with God, you are also reminding yourself of His promises, reinforcing your faith, and setting your spirit free from the chains of worry and fear. Every spoken prayer is a seed planted, and every declaration is a step toward receiving the peace, guidance, and breakthrough that God desires for you. Too often, people underestimate the power of speaking their faith. They think that silence or private thoughts are enough. But God honors bold declarations. When you openly declare that you are trusting Him, that you are laying down your worries, and that you believe in His goodness, you are making a spiritual statement that goes beyond your circumstances. You are telling your mind, your heart, and your spirit that fear will not control you, that doubt will not dominate you, and that you are relying fully on God's wisdom and power. These spoken affirmations have a profound effect. They align your spirit with God's will, strengthen your resolve, and prepare your heart to receive His guidance. Prayer is also a moment of surrender. In prayer, you place your burdens at God's feet and say, Lord, I cannot carry this alone. I need your help. I trust you to lead me, provide for me, and guide me through this challenge. This act of surrender is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of courage. It acknowledges that you recognize God's sovereignty and His ability to intervene in ways that you cannot. The more you pray, The more you release control and the more space you create for God to work miracles, provide clarity, and bring peace to your heart. Declarations, on the other hand, are active statements of faith. They are bold proclamations that reinforce the truth of God's power in your life. When you declare that you are laying down your worries and trusting God, today you are making a spiritual choice to live differently. You are telling fear that it has no place in your life. You are telling doubt that it will not control your actions. And you are telling yourself that God is bigger than every challenge you face. These declarations, repeated consistently, train your heart and mind to focus on God's faithfulness rather than your fears. Incorporating prayer and declaration into your daily life also strengthens your relationship with God. It creates a rhythm of dependence, communication, and intimacy that deepens your trust in Him. The more you speak, the more you believe. The more you believe, the more peace and courage fill your heart. And the more peace and courage you have, the better equipped you are to face life's challenges with confidence and hope. So today, take a moment to pray. Speak aloud your trust. Declare that you are laying down your worries, that you believe in God's plan, and that you are walking forward in faith. Let these words remind you of the power of God at work in your life and the freedom that comes when you surrender completely. Prayer and declaration are your keys to peace, empowerment, and transformation, and they begin the moment you speak them with faith.